Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, the Viceroy of Verisimilitude, the master of fun and wonder, and of course, the existential Mr. Rogers, with a little egg on my face for this chat. Yes, indeed. I hate to say it. The dog did not eat my homework, but the dog did pull my microphone cord out of my microphone as I was literally going live. And it interrupted the whole flow of the whole chat. Technical difficulties, had to start all over again. It happens. By the way, it was Gilbert and not Tallulah. You know, because why not? Why not take responsibility? Or why not blame someone else? I'm gonna blame my dog. There, you heard me say his name. He comes back again. He probably wants a cookie. And I guess, look at this. He should get one. He should get a cookie. I'll give him a cookie for interrupting the chat. How about that? There you go, buddy. Tallulah has to get a cookie too, because this house is an equal. All canines are equal in this whole up in this hizzle. So that's what they get. You know, they interrupt the flow, but they still get cookies. It's all just a clever ploy. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this. Wait, I'm all flustered now. The 253rd episode of Robservations, the show about something. Once again, I'm your host, Robert Burnett. And these chats are, of course, brought to you by Lucky Tiger Men's grooming products for those men who want to look good and feel great. And if you go to their website at getluckytiger.com, you buy any of their products and you punch in PGS for Post-Geek Singularity, you get 20% off your order, which is fantastic. Anyway, welcome to this Saturday. It's a lovely Saturday afternoon. The Seahawks are not playing today, but they are playing tomorrow, which is going to be exciting. Let's see what Russell Wilson and the boys, the Jedi Knights of the Pacific Northwest, will do with tomorrow's game. Hopefully another victory, which is always a good thing. First of all, first things first, a lot of people who watched the return of the Weekly Hero this week asked me, because I didn't get a chance, we had technical difficulties at the end of that show as well. I was going to show a new action figure. No, Gilbert, don't do it again. Look at this. He wants to get on camera. This is what he did when I was starting the show. You love this guy. Don't you love this guy? I love this guy. Do you love me? Yeah, I know you do. Give me a kiss, baby. Yeah. That's a Lucy Van Pelt moment. But anyway, he loves me. But you got to get off the show, buddy. I know you want. I know. Dude, you got to get down because you're going to pull my microphone out again. He did that once before. He loves me. But so anyway, on the Weekly Hero, on John Campy, and when John Campy and I do the Weekly Hero, I always bring on a toy, an action figure. And I had a good one to bring on, but before I could show it, the show went dead. So people have asked me, I must have received at least 25 either emails or DMs or whatever. What action figure was I going to show? Well, it's a good one, so I figured I'll show it here. It's Saturday. Why not? So this action figure, as many people know, action figures are usually based on, they're based on licensed properties, video games, movies, television shows, all kinds of things. Now, most of the time, you have to license these items in order to make them. Hot Toys has to get a license from Marvel or Disney to make Hot Toys of Star Wars and the Marvel things, and they have to get to, of course, when they do Superman and Batman, they have to go to Warner Brothers, as any company does. NECA, who does a lot of horror stuff, has to license all those from different companies. But there are a lot of figures from licensed properties that aren't going to sell as well, or there's really not an incentive for a larger company like Hot Toys, which has a certain profit margin they have to maintain in order to be able to make a figure. That's why they'll announce a 1966 6-scale Batmobile, and you'll see it. They'll make a prototype, which you'll see at the San Diego Comic-Con, and you salivate over it and you want to buy it. But then they release the Adam West, Burt Ward Batman figures that will go in that 6-scale vehicle, and those figures don't sell. So then they never make the 6-scale Batmobile, which, of course, makes everybody sad. Well, there are figures that no company in their right mind would necessarily manufacture en masse on a large scale. And the figure that I'm going to show you now is one such figure that I particularly enjoy the figure. The movie maybe not so much, but one of my favorite characters from British comics has been since I started reading in the early 80s, actually in the pages of Eagle Comics when they brought the comics to America, but it's Judge Dredd. Now, the first time we ever saw Judge Dredd on screen was in the Sylvester Stallone version of Judge Dredd. Now, I have had a Japanese figure made by a company called Medicom that's kind of an anime style version of Sylvester Stallone as Judge Dredd, and it was one of the very early real action hero figures. I want to say circa 97, 98, right after the movie came out. But I've always wanted to have a decent 6-scale figure of Sylvester Stallone as Judge Dredd. And no one ever would make one. Because why would they? But this year, a third-party company called Virtual Toys took it upon themselves. And why do I particularly like this figure? I've always liked the costume because Jean-Paul Gaultier designed the costume. And I've always liked it. And so when they announced that they're going to make this toy about, I want to say like maybe 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Now, if you want to get a third-party figure, they're very hard to get because it's not like they sell them at retail stores. I mean, sometimes they do, but most of the time they don't. Now, my go-to place well, it's a place called the Monkey Depot online. Now, I've been buying things from the Monkey Depot for years. Now, if you want third-party figures, because there's a lot of really good ones. A lot of people have been seeing the Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker figure that's making the rounds. The prototype looks insane. Well, what you have to do in a lot of these places is pre-order them sometimes years in advance. Now, this isn't unusual. Like Hot Toys, you can pre-order from Sideshow in advance. Now, you have to put money down, but you don't have to put the entire money down. And then sometimes if you want, they have a really great payment plan. You pay as you can, you have installments, and then when you've paid it off, they'll send it to you. But if you sometimes buy things from the Monkey Depot, it's probably best to prepay the whole amount because you don't know. And sometimes if the figure never comes out, they'll refund you the money. Monkey Depot does not pay me. They're not an official sponsor of this show. I like them. I've been dealing with them for years, over a decade, and their customer service is impeccable. And even though I paid for this figure quite some time ago, and it actually got released, people had it back in February. There's people that reviewed it back in February. I don't know. This was a figure I almost forgot that I even ordered. But here it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is Virtual Toys figure of Judge Dredd from the film. It actually comes with 2 head sculpts. And as you can see, this figure is beautifully engineered. The clothes are really well designed. It needs to be, I need to flatten it out, but they are actually, look at it this way, they're very well tailored, really, really cool. And it comes with 2 different head sculpts. One like this with his Sylvester Stallone sneer, and then the other is just Sylvester Stallone without the helmet. And I have to say, I'm a real fan of this figure. I think it's great. Also, look at this. Normally with third-party figures, you don't get ornate stands, but I think Virtual Toys knocked this out of the park, and I cannot be happier with this figure. I think it's great. Now, is the movie great? No, it has some sentimental value to me because of a work situation with it. But, that's the figure I was going to show off on John Campy's show. And I also have a third-party unlicensed Carl Urban as Judge Dredd, which I have shown on the Weekly Hero, I think a year ago almost. And I'm going to display them next to each other. And I can take my old Medicom anime real action hero from 23 years ago or 22 years ago and retire that figure. I'm very happy that I can retire that figure because, quite frankly, it is quite frankly inferior, as Khan would say. So there you go, folks. Judge Dredd in 6 scale. Got him from the Monkey Depot. You know what? If you want to look at great figures, you want to pre-order figures, the Monkey Depot is your place. You can sometimes get loose figures. They got all kinds of crazy stuff. I think it's just the monkeydepot.com, or maybe it's just monkeydepot.com. I'm not sure. But if you're interested, go there. They're a great company. They come with my highest recommendation. Now, on to the chat. Ladies and gentlemen, I talked a couple days ago about how my loins were engorging with Star Wars excitement. I can feel it. Sometimes against my better judgment, the Star Wars excitement is bubbling up, or it's bubbling down, depending on or it's bubbling down and then bubbling back up, which gives me that warm, tingly feeling I'm so fond of. Who knows? All I do know is that I'm getting Star Wars fever. And as all of you know, or unless you're living under a rock, the final trailer for Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker drops Monday night during Monday Night Football, but also tickets go on sale for The Rise of Skywalker on Monday. Now, I've been thwarted before. Well, not really. Not I really haven't. But when they go on sale, who knows? Are they going to go on sale after the trailer's over? Also, I'm going to start looking at 12:01 Monday morning so I can snag my tickets for the Cinerama Dome, because that's how I like to roll. But what's really interesting about the lead up to Rise of Skywalker is we are getting 7 straight weeks of live action Star Wars, beginning with the debut of Disney Plus on November 12th. That's a Tuesday. Disney Plus drops on November 12th. It goes online. It comes alive. NCOM systems, if you're a Tron fan, which is pretty exciting that this is happening. So the 12th of November, the first episode of The Mandalorian drops on Tuesday, the 12th of November. And if that wasn't exciting enough, the following Friday after Tuesday, so there'll be Tuesday, then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So the third day after that Tuesday, that Friday, the 15th is when the second episode of The Mandalorian drops. So that week between the 12th and 15th, we are getting 2 new hours of live action Star Wars. And by all accounts, people have now seen, there have been certain members of, dare I say it, the access media, who have seen the first 30 minutes of The Mandalorian. Everybody's raving about it. They're raving about the score, of course, and everyone's saying it's just incredible. Now, what's going to happen is every Friday after that, every Friday after the 15th, a new episode of The Mandalorian will drop. There is a total of 8 episodes of The Mandalorian. And here's the cool part. So we're going to get 7 episodes of The Mandalorian. And then the following Friday is actually December 20th. And what happens on that Friday? Well, guess what happens on that Friday? That's right. The Rise of Skywalker opens. So that is a bye week for The Mandalorian. A bye week for The Mandalorian. The week of that Friday, December 20th, is no Mandalorian. And then the following Friday, in between Christmas and New Year's, just in time for 2020, we are getting the last episode of The Mandalorian. So it is 7 straight weeks of Star Wars. I don't know about you. I put aside any acrimonious feelings I have. It's exciting, people. Every episode of The Mandalorian, it was reported that every episode costs $15 million. And of course, they're using new technology, so they're probably getting $30 million of production value out of each episode, I would imagine. I'm very, very excited about all of this. I think it's going to be a game changer, the way The Mandalorian is produced, in terms of how we are able to, when we have upcoming shows like the Foundation series that's being made for Apple TV based on Isaac Asimov's Foundation, this kind of technology, game-changing, exciting stuff, people. It just means that we are going to be getting some incredible science fiction. And Jon Favreau and his team really, I think, know how to produce a Star Wars show for, even though it's $15 million, which is very expensive for a episodic TV series. I think what we're going to get is, well, probably 100 times more satisfying than any episode of Star Trek Discovery, which cost around the same amount of money, if not more. But it's going to be really interesting, and I'm very excited. Of course, what I've been hearing, a lot of I know Nerdrotic and Gary Beekler were talking about the fact that they are doing extensive reshoots, last-minute reshoots for Rise of Skywalker. I have heard this as well from multiple sources, but what's allowing them to do this is the technology that was developed. Well, it's been ongoing, but Favreau's been working with it from Jungle Book up through Lion King, and it was adapted and it is being used, state-of-the-art technology, to make The Mandalorian, which has allowed them to do the extensive reshoots they have apparently been doing on Rise of Skywalker. I have no official knowledge of anything specific. I've just heard in the most general terms they've been using the Mandalorian tech in terms of and it's mostly special effects technology, compositing, things like that, to almost do real-time reshoots for Rise of Skywalker. And it's allowed them to do the extensive reshoots that apparently are going on, because look, I don't envy, I've been no fan of J.J. Abrams, but I don't envy the man as a creative. Obviously, he's a esteemed director. He's made some big budget epic sci-fi films that I've personally couldn't stand, but I understand making any film is a difficult endeavor, and I appreciate even tonight, apparently, the trailer for the first two 15-minute episodes of Axanar that I was at one point directing the feature, but now I have nothing to do with Axanar, but the first trailer for their new episodes are dropping, and apparently they're using all of the special effects that I directed over the course of 6 months. So that's kind of exciting. It'll be interesting to see how live action footage is intercut with my visual effects. That's how the visual effects were designed. They always ran long, but they were always going to be intercut between. I don't know if they're going to be, I don't know if that's what we're going to see, but I'm curious to see how another director, Paul Jenkins, would utilize that. And it'll be interesting to see. But anybody who's making movies, I applaud, because it is a difficult, long task. So whether Rise of Skywalker is undergoing reshoots, and by the way, a lot of people are like, oh my God, in this day and age, it might seem crazy, and especially with a worldwide release, indeed, it is pretty crazy. But with digital technology, you can do a lot of triage on movies up until you can push it. And remember, we're still 2 months out from the release of Rise of Skywalker. Now they're gonna have to subtitle it and get it ready. But you know what? Even if they reshot for another 15 days and they were 45 days out from a worldwide release, depending on how they've done it, and especially if they're making strategic additions and not, it's doable. It's crazy, but it's doable because we live in a digital world, and that's the only way it's possible. But it's not like, oh my God. I mean, look, I wouldn't want to be in that position. I wouldn't want to be. The problem with Rise of Skywalker that I see is that there is no way. Everybody is expecting that Jesus is going to walk on water in this movie, and he can't. He can't. Jesus is not going to. And yet everybody believes that this movie has to be, because it's the wrap up of the whole Skywalker saga. There's no way, as I've said before, with the story that they're telling, there's no way that you're going to get a sense of Return of the King finality or satisfaction from it, because they haven't set up a story that is being paid off. They're essentially having to start from scratch. I mean, we know these characters, but this is like the second season of a TV show all in one movie. So I think that whoever watches it is going to always come away with it, no matter how good it is. They're going to go, well, that was okay. That was pretty good. Or it could have been better. No one's ever going to say, oh my God, that was the most amazing thing in the world, because it can't be. It's just, it doesn't have the kind of setup. It's not, you're not coming off of a story where you're going, I wonder what's going to happen next. I mean, let's go get whatever they're going to get, the Jedi MacGuffin from wherever. And Kylo and Rey will fight. Okay. But I'm still excited. I'm still excited. There's Star Wars is coming out. I will always get excited for new Star Wars, no matter what it is, because it's Star Wars after all. Wouldn't you rather live your life in terms of being excited about something and not? It's a lifestyle choice. You can choose to be excited. I listen to fans go, "Ugh, after The Last Jedi, I'm not excited at all. I don't care about Star Wars." I'm like, give me a break. Come on. And I say that because I love James Bond movies, and James Bond movies have always been hit and miss. They've always been hit and miss. I mean, I remember my senior year in high school, View to a Kill came out. I got to go see a early screening of it, exhibitor screening of it, like a month in advance. I was really excited. I was so disappointed. I walked out of View to a Kill and I'm like, oh my God, I'm completely bored by a James Bond movie. I didn't like it at all, except I like the title track, and John Barry's score is pretty good. But the rest of the movie is just I just didn't like it. And, I feel bad about that. I don't like not liking a James Bond movie, but in my lifetime, it's been a little hit and miss, to be honest. When I first started going to see James Bond movies in the theater, I've told everybody that my first James Bond movie in the theater was Spy Who Loved Me. Great. Loved it. Moonraker. I was 12, caught in the grips. I just turned 12. And I was a fanatical Star Wars fan, Star Trek fan, and that came out. So when Star Wars came out in 77 with Spy Who Loved Me, not the exact same day, but Spy Who Loved Me in 77 came out the same summer as Star Wars. And then, of course, 2 years later, because we got a Bond movie every 2 years, we got Moonraker. And Moonraker is big and goofy, and it's basically a remake of The Spy Who Loved Me. I love Moonraker. One day I should release my last summer, not this past summer, but the summer before, I did my drunk Moonraker commentary. I got completely wasted. I drank like 2 bottles of wine, and then I was drinking whiskey while I watched Moonraker. And I would stand in front of my screen as I was watching it and do commentary. So I got these little chunks of me. And I was on Twitter. People could watch along. And I was thinking about, I did actually cut it together, and I was thinking about putting it up, but then I'm like, Chris Gore made a funny point to me. He goes, you and I, he was talking about himself and pointing to me. He said, you and I, we could never get regular corporate jobs because of everything we've said on the internet. And then people would just never hire you because then they would have to go through. This is now the 253rd episode of Robservations. I've done a year's worth of John Campia's show. I did 3.5 years of Heroes. I guess I would have to be, who would ever spend that time vetting me for a corporate job? Probably nobody. So if I put up my drunk Moonraker commentary, people would be like, for a middle-aged guy to get drunk and do commentaries on James Bond movies. I was going to do all of the James Bond movies, do drunk commentary on all of them, but I decided not to. But anyway, Star Wars is coming out, and even I feel this way about the Star Wars prequels. I've said, even though I think they're bad movies, I think they're good Star Wars. I think The Force Awakens is actually an okay movie, but bad Star Wars. It's kind of the reverse. But there's always something to like. When a Star Wars movie starts, I want to know how does you see the Star Wars and the words descending into the background, you hear John Williams' theme, and then as you come out of the main title, what's the music going to be? Like, what's the score going to sound like as you pan down to wherever? And are we going to see a Star Destroyer? Because, it's not Star Wars if you don't see some kind of a ship when it pans down. And how's that going to look? What's the next shot going to be? What's going to happen? And every single frame of a Star Wars movie, there's something. Like there's a new spaceship or a new droid or a new alien or a new costume element, something new where you're like, ah. So while you're watching Star Wars movies, I find it's like having my favorite Meat Lovers pizza from the Pasadena Pizza Company right down the street. I love their Meat Lovers pizza. And when I devour it, it's so good. Like I order one, I'll walk down and pick it up and walk back. And it's just, you smell it and then you eat it. It really depends how many pieces I have as to whether or not I feel it was a good choice or not. Because if you eat too much, then it's like, oh, why did I do that to myself? But while you're eating it, while you're putting that deliciousness in your mouth, it's great. It's great. You don't think about it. So when you're watching a Star Wars movie and you're letting it all wash over you, I don't have any feelings about it. I'm just enjoying the experience, as I do with most movies. And then when I leave and start contemplating, I mean, actually, by the time the movie gets to the end and I'm contemplating it or down as the end credits roll, even though I'm enjoying at least John Williams' score, then it really hits me if I liked the movie or not. And I Force Awakens, I didn't. Last Jedi, I found interesting. I was contemplating it, going, "Oh, that was interesting." It wasn't until later that I could really kind of take more of it in. I mean, the problem I have with both Last Jedi and Force Awakens is I just don't. The only thing I really cared about that I was really interested in is Luke's story and Han's story. But anyway, I still loved the experience of watching those movies for the first time. So I can't wait to see The Mandalorian. Everything about The Mandalorian looks great. Rise of Skywalker, I'm just interested. I'm like, wow, are they going to do this? I mean, I've read every Reddit spoiler. I've read every theory because it's Star Wars, because I've been doing it since I was a kid, reading the theories. And, you know, it sounds like, okay, it'll be a serviceable science fiction adventure. But everything I've read about the movie, no spoilers, it kind of sounds very episodic. It really sounds like an episode, like a two-part episode of a television series. And it does not sound like the conclusion of one of the greatest mythic sagas of all time, because the people that we're going to watch are not really the people that Star Wars has been about. They're like these new people, and I just, we'll see. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm caught in the grips, man. I'm caught in the grips. Now, let me, Deadline had an article today, this morning. I'm just going to read it about ticket sales. Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker movie tickets go on sale Monday. In similar fashion to Disney's previous Skywalker Star Wars installments, tickets for the finale of the 9-title franchise, which kicked off back in 1977, will go on sale Monday, October 21st. Tickets for The Rise of Skywalker will become available following the halftime of ESPN's Monday Night Football game between the New England Patriots and New York Jets after Disney drops the final trailer for the film. That could be a lie. With time zones and all of those things, I never put my trust in that. I'm always looking throughout the day. I will start looking on the 21st at midnight or 12:01. So don't necessarily believe it if you really have to get those tickets for that first showing. And let's face it, who watching this broadcast doesn't want to go to that first show? Check it out. Make it happen. If you have kids, your kids will love you for it. The run on Star Wars The Force Awakens tickets back in 2015 caused advanced ticket sales sites to crash, which occurred recently back in April with the record first-day pre-sales for Avengers Endgame, a record that was shared by Fandango and Atom Tickets. Some aren't expecting Skywalker pre-sales to best those of Endgame. However, a record of some sort will be in store, i.e. hourly or evening or second and third best first-day sales. Endgame, in the days prior to its April 26th opening, had amassed an estimated $120 million in pre-sales before an image of the film even flickered on the screen, a figure that outstripped that of Star Wars The Force Awakens pre-sales of $100 million. Opening weekend was $247.9 million. Off Endgame's lofty pre-sale numbers, many anticipated a $300 million plus all-time record opening for Endgame, and that is exactly what happened, with $357.1 million in the US and Canada. First of all, guys, everyone, I just want to put the kibosh on this right now. Everybody's going to be comparing and contrasting Star Wars to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They should not. They have nothing to do with each other. Now they're both owned by Disney. They're both, Disney companies. Okay, Marvel's a Disney and Lucasfilm is Disney. But this idea that you're pitting Star Wars against the MCU, apples and oranges. It's just apples and oranges. Among Fandango's top look, Force Awakens, Force Awakens was a fluke. Fluke. It was a fluke. It made $2 billion. That was a fluke, And the Last Jedi numbers were more in keeping with what to expect from Star Wars. I don't even expect Rise of Skywalker to make $2 billion. I don't know. Maybe it will, it's going to all depend on how good the movie is. Let's face it. Among Fandango's top first-day ticket sellers, they are Endgame, Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, Star Wars Rogue One, and last year's Avengers Infinity War. Fandango will be offering exclusive Rise of Skywalker gift cards. That's pretty cool. J.J. Abrams returns as director, obviously, and co-writer with Chris Terrio, Pixar's Carrie Fisher. You all know that. I'm not going to read that. And Rise of Skywalker opens on December 20th. So we're going to get the penultimate episode of The Mandalorian the previous Friday. Then Rise of Skywalker opens on the 20th. And then we're getting the final episode of the first season of The Mandalorian on December 27th. The Mandalorian, by the way, has already been renewed for season 2. So I'm pretty excited, man. I mean, think about it. Today is October 19th. Basically in 3 weeks, we're getting all Mandalorianed up. I can't wait. Strap it on. Strap on that Mandalorian armor. Let's see what happens. So I'm excited about Star Wars. I'm excited. I am excited about seeing Lando Calrissian coming back. I'm excited to see Emperor Palpatine come back, however he's going to come back. Force Ghost Luke, whomever, Chewbacca. I hope R2-D2 gets redeemed, because not only do they have BB-8 in this movie, but they have a Mystery Science Theater 3000 looking droid in this thing too. That's now BB-8's sidekick. I hope 3PO really does get to strap on those bandoliers and wreck some shop, because I want to see C-3PO kick some ass, shoot some people, kill some dudes and some dudettes, some alien carnage. A lot of First Order troops should be going down under the watchful gaze of C-3PO's red eyes as he mows a bunch of dudes down. I want to see that happen. I want 3PO to go 3PO on their asses. Because wouldn't that be great? Isn't that the way things are supposed to be? I think so. But anyway, I am excited for Star Wars. You should be excited for Star Wars. Who isn't excited for Star Wars? So first of all, I have a letter from our favorite comedian, Paul in Long Beach. Paul in Long Beach, let's see, before I read his letter, he did send a link, which I have not clicked on, to be honest. I'm going to send it to you guys in the chat. Here is Paul from Long Beach's link. You can see it in the chat. Hate to say I told you so, Rob, but I told you so. Way back in August, I sent you the attached article from Bloomberg about Facebook hiring contractors to transcribe users' phone conversations. It's inherently an American paranoia to be wary of Big Brother in a government sense. We as a nation have tossed these fears aside and allowed private corporations to take the place of government with absolutely no accountability. That being said, the first tenet of the market says you get what you pay for. As a free service, neither you nor any users have any real standing to complain about Facebook's abuse of disinformation or your personal information. Everyone was told this was happening, yet still continue to utilize the platform. Personal responsibility, as some would say. If one is dumb enough to believe everything they read online, they deserve the outcome of what they support. Now, I was in your neck of LA earlier this week for my niece's birthday party. My brother lives and owns a business in Arcadia. That's basically right next door. While we were chatting in her room, I noticed amongst her books the Wheel of Time collection. Without this show, without Robservations, never would I have cared about a young adult novel collection. So allow me to say this clearly. You're a right cheesy bastard, Stubble McShave. I borrowed Eye of the World and, of course, finished it in a day. I've said recently, I can't keep up with modern entertainment, damn it. But I'm now so looking forward to the Wheel of Time show. F you, Stubble. It's all your fault for creating a fan. Cheers, bud. Paul in Long Beach. Well, Paul, thank you for the letter. I'm sure Stubble McShave, if he's watching this live, must be doing a happy dance, because I don't think that there's anyone on the planet Earth, at least I don't know anyone, that is more excited about the Wheel of Time series than our own Stubble McShave. I can hear him, even though he's in Sweden, I think I can hear him right now. Maybe he is watching the show. Anyway, I'm sure he'll like to hear that. So that's cool. I mean, I love when the community that we're building is active. Emil Johansson says, "What are the best Batman the Animated Series episodes? I'm almost done now. Man, I don't even know. I couldn't even, I couldn't begin to tell you. But you know what? I can do a quick Google search and I'll go. Let's see, 5 best Batman the Animated Series episodes. Okay, let's see what I come up with." Wow. Okay. Well, here you go. According to IGN, top 10 Batman the Animated Series episodes: 10, Harley's Holiday; 9, Two-Face; 8, Harley and Ivy; 7, Perchance to Dream. I love that episode. Also, another Shakespeare reference. Wait, where was I? 6, Beware the Gray Ghost. That's another great episode. 5, Joker's Favor. Oh, these are good. 4, Over the Edge, possibly the series darkest episode. 3, Robin's Reckoning. 2, Almost Got Him. And according to IGN, the number 1 Batman the Animated Series episode is Heart of Ice. I have to tell you, to be honest, I love Batman the Animated Series, but I do not know the episode titles. Is there any other choice? I'm going to read what they say about number 1. Actually, I should tell you who wrote this article first. It's by Clifford Wheatley, and this was published on October 30th, 2018. This is what he says about Heart of Ice. "Is there any other choice? This award-winning episode was the first written by Paul Dini and directed by Bruce Timm, the driving force of the DC animated universe that would follow for the next decade or so. Though there were some stellar episodes before it, Two-Face and On Leather Wings, for example." Oh, I love On Leather Wings. I know that one. "It was Heart of Ice that showed how deep the animated series could connect with viewers. Revamping the origin of B-list villain Mr. Freeze, this episode created great sympathy for a character that was a little more than a goofy gimmick at the time and would set the precedent for Batman's rogues in this series. In fact, Dini's addition of Mr. Freeze's wife, Nora, would quickly be added to the comics and become the starting point for the character's resurgence. Heart of Ice is a crowning achievement not only in Batman the Animated Series, but for animation in general. It's the pinnacle of the show's balance between kid-friendly superheroics, strong character beats, and thematic relevance that adult viewers can soak in. Heart of Ice remains a great piece of television, animation or otherwise." And by the way, the honorable mention, according to IGM, goes to Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which I pretty much agree with wholeheartedly. So that's cool. Thank you for asking that, Emil Johansson. Stubble McShave says, "I got the Name of the Rose Blu-ray from the UK. The sound's wonky." Really? I don't have the Name of the Rose Blu-ray. Well, I'm glad, Stubble. So you really were cheering from Sweden, which is great. I don't have that Blu-ray. As everyone knows, I did get Angel Heart from the UK the other day on 4K, but I haven't watched it yet. But I'm sorry, the sound sounds wonky. That's never a good thing. Never a good thing. DMV fan 123 says, "Don't forget the game Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order." That is true. By the way, the new Star Wars game Jedi Fallen Order is coming out. You know what? Maybe that does. Let's see. When does it come out? Does it fit my order release date? Does it fit in the? We'll see. I don't know. Jedi Fallen Order comes out when? November 15th, 2019. It is in the 7-week window. So there you go. Jedi Fallen Order, which looks to be dope. That looks really great. So there you go. The Mandalorian, Jedi Fallen Order, and we get The Rise of Skywalker. That is just a Star Wars smorgasbord, a potpourri of Star Wars goodness. And what's not to love about that? Okay. This is an episode. Here's another letter from Ian Samuels. I swear to God, I worry about Ian sometimes because he writes letters like every day. Sometimes I can't read them and I feel bad. I go to bed guilty. But this I wanted to hear about and I'm excited. Thank you, Ian, for writing this in. Ian says, "Rob, As I have mentioned before, H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds is one of my all-time favorite books, and there has yet to be an accurate adaptation on film or television because it took place in Victorian England. I have now seen the first episode of the BBC period adaptation. The cast is excellent. Robert Carlyle is Ogilvy, the astronomer, and Rafe Spall is George, the journalist. It is difficult to believe that Rafe Spall was Noel, the drug-dealing sales assistant, junior to Shaun and Shaun of the Dead. He certainly has matured into an excellent actor. But then we have Eleanor Tomlinson playing the character of Amy. I have no problem with the actress, but the character of Amy purely exists so that there is a female character for the viewers to follow. For the character of Amy to exist, they create a bullshit adultery story for the character of the journalist. This is the first unnecessary move away from the book. Then the first cylinder lands. For some reason, unlike in the book and the excellent 1953 movie adaptation where the object that lay in the pit was too hot to touch, in this adaptation, Ogilvy can approach the cylinder with no problem. Soon they're working on digging it out, but it is not a cylinder. For some unknown reason for this adaptation, it is a sphere, which takes off, spins, and evaporates into dust. This sphere supposedly fires out the heat ray, but random people running from the scene burst into white flame and burn away into nothing. No ray, not even a hint at a wave of heat, just people bursting into white flame completely at random. Then there is movement in the crater left by the sphere, suggesting something more to come. The machines themselves, the tripod machines, are a relatively good representation, except for the lack of a decent version of the heat ray, but they do use the black smoke. So why the adultery story and Amy, and why spheres? If they wanted to have a female character, what would be the problem with using his wife? Why mar his character by making him an adulterer and make his wife his cousin? My opinion overall, disappointed. Ian, what a bummer, dude. Yeah, it's really interesting. This idea when you're adapting a book that somehow, we need to go in and make the characters, more relatable or give them more conflict for the modern age. I kind of understand that, but not really. If you're going to adapt the period, sure, you've got to make it for contemporary audiences, but it does take place in Victorian England. So, I was really looking forward to that. Maybe it'll get better. Hope springs eternal. Let's hope. Ian Samuels is back again. I told you, he writes multiple letters a day, man. But I'm going to read this one anyway. Ian Samuels says, where the true power lies. With presidents like George W. Bush and now Donald Trump, it makes me feel that the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was correct. In Hitchhikers, it says about the president of the galaxy, quote, the position of the president of the galaxy is not to wield power, but to distract attention away from it. In this, Zaphod Beeblebrox is the perfect president. I love the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I love the books, but I mostly love the original radio series, which is where I fell in love with it in the first place. If you guys haven't heard it, you can get it on CD. I'm sure it's streaming somewhere online. You've got to listen to the original Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's one of my favorite things ever. And even since I think I first heard it when I was like 12, one of my first jobs, I worked at a frame store. I framed pictures. I was a picture framer. Yes, I cut glass and I cut mat board and put frames together. And yes, I did. And I was like 12. But I only took the job because I wanted to frame my own movie posters. So I figured, oh, great. I can get molding for cheap, glass for cheaper, and I'll work at a frame store and get paid at the same time and get my movie posters framed. So it was very, very utilitarian. I also had a job that was pre-video store. But yeah, I did it. Are idiots like Bush and Trump allowed to be presidents of America because they were so good at distracting people's attention away from where true power lies? Well, many conspiracy theorists would tell you that is correct. Yeah, politics, money, all of it. I couldn't tell you. It's very interesting living in this country during the Trump presidency and watching how the hallowed halls of power are dealing with it or not dealing with it. For those of you, whether you support Trump or not, he didn't staff much of our government. from the beginning. There's still much of our government since he took power that remains unstaffed, and that's kind of interesting. I want to read the account of what in our government just stopped working because there was nobody working in that actual part of the government. But it's like watching a car crash in slow motion. I don't understand, but love The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and Douglas Adams was a very brilliant guy. So there's probably a lot of truth in there. Definitely a lot of truth. Stub McShave says, Paul in Long Beach, I'm sorry for hooking you on that sweet Wheel of Time drug. I wouldn't call it YA, though, especially not the latter part of the series. Well, Stubble, I will tell him that you took umbrage of the term YA. Yes, I need to get in on it. I haven't read it. I need to, and one day I promise I am going to. This is an interesting letter. My man James Wallace, who I actually got to meet last weekend, he came out and bought a print, one of Elizabeth's prints at the Pasadena Art Walk. Very cool guy. He and I definitely park our shuttlecraft in the same shuttle bay, has sent in another letter. Once again, James Wallace. Hello, Robert. You mentioned something the other day about Overlord. I remember when I saw that film with a friend of mine. We went to see it because he is buddies with the lead actor, Jovan Adepo. So it was a show of support to view the film on opening night. After the film, my friend asked me what I thought. I told him I was pissed off. Not only was the film lousy, but the main character Jovan played was a moron. Now, this upset me for a variety of reasons, but full disclosure, I write, and I've been writing for many years, and found maybe within the last few years, I have finally gotten a grasp on screenwriting that I'm finally confident enough to show my work. It's never perfect, and it never will be, but I strive for perfection, which at times holds me back. One of the things I do when I write is to try and change things up on each project I work on. I don't want characters to be the same. I want to exercise different imaginary muscles, try something new, take a risk. At times, I'm frustrated with myself because certain scripts have similar themes, but I also remind myself I'm not produced yet. The only person that sees the similar themes is the person I pay to proofread my work. One thing that always bugs me when I read a script is the race of a character is brought up in the description to a degree. I know why it's there, but it bugs me. I usually bring up nationalities. However, it's almost always the case that if Black or African American isn't in the description, the character is automatically white. I don't care what the skin color or ethnicity of a character should be. I just want the best actor in the part to help bring to life the character, and hopefully, as a collaborative effort, the narrative works once adapted into film. My former stepdad is Black, and he used to be very critical of my work, instilling in me the tools that allowed me to gauge my material in critical thinking mode. A very smart man, extremely literate, and a great debater, yet he had his flaws like we all do as people. Now, I bring this up due to I see a stereotype in J.J. Abrams' films when it comes to Black characters. We'll take The Force Awakens. Finn is also a moron that risks lives to try and get with Rey. Some would say that's selfish and not heroic. Almost a blank slate, his puppy love antics make his character come off as clueless and desperate, in love with Rey the moment he sees her. Then his character, even though in the First Order, doesn't have edge. He's innocent, yet he's a stormtrooper? A stormtrooper that was a janitor on Starkiller Base? Why does he have to be a janitor? Why can't he be a character that has killed people? Why not be edgy and charming like Lando? Lando is a cool character, yet also conflicted and showed dimension. Lando also had a game plan and was successful when Han catches up with him again in Empire. I hope the rumors I'm hearing of Lando being Finn's father are not true. That would be rather insulting if they were and bring new meaning to It's a Small Galaxy. Finn is a thin character who basically just wants to be with Rey in The Force Awakens, but they don't hook up. There really isn't time for it. But it's like they use his love for her either as comic relief or motivation that reeks of desperation. One could argue Luke fell in love with Leia as soon as he saw the holographic image, but he had to be convinced to go on the journey. Finn isn't a hero. He just wants to split the scene. And I find it troublesome that JJ may have made this character thinking he's a role model. With The Last Jedi, again, what does Finn want to do as soon as he's reintroduced? Leave and go find Rey. With that film, that's not JJ's fault, that's Rian Johnson. Under Johnson, Finn doesn't really gain dimension with the exception of self-sacrifice that is ruined by another minority character risking lives due to puppy love. I go into this about Finn because Overlord, Joven's character, is basically Finn. Considering his character Boyce, who does risky things so he can get with Chloe, the French villager. At the end of the film, the same type of motivated love or crush on a woman, and nothing then happens with the relationship. Having talked to people that have worked on JJ's films, James does work in the industry, he really gets in there, even if it isn't his baby as a director. In fact, one film he produced, he went back and reshot a majority of the film and went uncredited as the director. Pretty sure he did the same with Overlord, or at least had a hand with the script revisions. It's just too coincidental that these two characters basically have the same types of traits and character arcs. Why couldn't they have cast Joven as Wyatt Russell's character and Wyatt be Bryce? That's the thing. I can't think of a white character that's a moron and doesn't really get the girl, aside from, maybe Jack Burton. But at least even he kisses the girl at the end. Why couldn't Boyce get with Chloe? Or Finn get with Rey? Instead, it's turned into a possible Reylo affair. Which that in and of itself is ridiculous. On a positive note, this is my favorite. Joven is going to play Larry Underwood in the Stand miniseries. At first, I was peeved into thinking they would take the Underwood character and do a Hollywood transformation and turn him into a rapper instead of the rock musician he is in the book. I just couldn't imagine the "Baby, Can You Dig Your Man" in rap lyrics. Yes, that sounds stereotypical, but you barely see rockers in current Hollywood fare who are black. They're usually always white. Fortunately, that isn't the case. Joven is going to play him as a rocker, which I'm happy to hear. Funny thing is, I'm rereading The Stand after 29 years, and King describes Underwood as black sounding in his voice, even though the character is white in the book. I can get behind Joven's casting as this character, and I'm happy for him, because Underwood is a character with meat and could really propel his career. Larry gets the girls, he's the hero, he has an edge. That's what needs to happen for minority actors. White writers need to write black or Hispanic characters who are heroic, as if the character has the traits you see in the white characters they grew up with over the years. Don't think about race, just write the character, and not write minority characters in a tokenism way that Finn or Boyce seem to have been written in. Well, James, I thought that was a good letter, and I agree with you. I absolutely agree with that. I think that, first of all, The Stand is probably I would consider it my favorite book of all time. And I don't necessarily think it's the greatest book ever written, or its ending is a little anticlimactic. Stephen King is obviously not known for his endings, but I don't think I ever enjoyed the first time I picked up The Stand. I had got it from the Science Fiction Book Club, and it was a heavy tome. I don't think I enjoyed. I mean, literally, it really was like reading was eating cotton candy at a country fair. I loved everything about The Stand. I loved all the characters. I loved the situation, as I've talked about on the show before. For whatever reason, I love stories about plagues and super flus and anything that decimates entire populations. I love that. I love it. You give me a book about any disease or give me a movie about a virulent plague, and I will watch it. I can't help myself. It's one of my favorite subgenres, and The Stand is the end all be all of this genre. It is the stairway to heaven of super disease books. It really is. The same way that for instance, The Crow is the stairway to heaven of goth movies, I think. And of course, Bela Lugosi's Dead is the stairway to heaven of goth music. So maybe you could say that The Stand is the Bela Lugosi's Dead of the superflu genre. Yeah, I think that's better. Now, the idea of changing Larry Underwood, and anybody who's ever there are two things you cannot stop repeating when you've read The Stand. One of them is, baby, can you dig your man? He's a righteous man. And another thing is when Fran finds out, it's I'm pregnant because I'm pregnant. Because I'm pregnant. There's this one scene, and I remember for weeks I would get angry or something, and I would just think to myself, I'm pregnant, even though I could never be pregnant. But it's funny. We talk a lot about swapping races of characters. I think, in a way, when I read scripts, when I read scripts for a living, or even when people are always asking me, well, who do you see in the role? Like for my own comic book, Living in Infamy, that has come close to being turned into both TV and movies. I'm always asked, well, who did I see in the role? And I'm like, you know what? I don't think that way, because one of the great joys if you work in movies and you get to be in a position where you get to be in casting or pick people for the role is to see people. I've talked about this before, and they surprise you. They delight you. They bring something. I mean, every time you if you're a filmmaker, and especially if you've written the script and you watch actors come in and they read for you, you want to see, the thing that you're looking for the most is magic. You're looking for an actor to take here's what happens when you're in casting. If anybody wants to go into movies or whatever, and you want to act, it's very important that you bring a take in with you. And what I mean by that is you need to have a take on the character. The words that are on the page they're just on the page. What you want to do is you want to make them your own, but bring a quality that isn't on the page to the words. Now, I'm not saying that you try some crazy accent but you've got to bring something. And a writer or a director or a casting person or producer, they sit in a casting session, and what they want to see is they want to see somebody come in and read those words, even if it's just one sentence of dialogue, and bring some kind of magic pixie dust to it. Say it in such a way that, like, oh my God, wow. And by the way, you might see 100 actors and you'll only get one or two of them that bring that pixie dust. And that's what you're looking for. You have the part. And I think the idea of an actor like Jovan who's going to play Larry Underwood, like when I first heard that casting, because the casting of The Stand has been an important thing to me. I've talked about how my friends Gary and Edmund Enton and I, the filmmakers that I've worked with in the past, we've been playing cast The Stand. We both love the miniseries The Stand, even though it's all three of us actually. We love the miniseries The Stand, even though it's budgetarily challenged. But I love the idea of making Larry Underwood black. And what's really interesting about Stephen King books, the same was true when Morgan Freeman played Red in Shawshank Redemption. Because I think Stephen King writes sort of universal and timeless characters. And that's why you read his books now. And sure, there's a lot of things that might be dated in terms of pop culture references and things like that. But I think the fact that you can interchange ethnicities in his characters speaks to his kind of writing. And I love the idea of Larry Underwood being played by a black guy, a black actor. I love it. I think it's great. And I can't wait. You cannot make The Stand without recording Baby, Can You Dig Your Man? And I think one of the great disappointments of Mick Garris's adaptation, the 90s miniseries of The Stand, was I did not like the version of Baby, Can You Dig Your Man? I'm like, come on, dude. You can do better than that. And I'm sure that I can tell you one thing. I can guarantee you the new CBS All Access limited series of The Stand is going to have an outstanding rendition of Baby, Can You Dig Your Man? Because he's a righteous man. And anybody who's read The Stand will know just how important it is. But, I do. I think it's interesting. I don't like, what's great stories. I always say stories, don't put the Burnett axiom, don't put your universe or your ethnicity before, or any of those things before your characters and your story. And I think, if you've like I've read over 3,000 screenplays professionally when I was a story analyst back in the 90s. And when I read that, James is right. Most of the time, they never would mention ethnicity. I mean, usually with someone who's black, they would. But I like to know very little going in when I'm reading a script, and I want a character's action and the way they speak to define who they are in my mind. So I don't like it when people ask me, who do you see in this role? Well, I mean, they ask that because they want to know what movie star can we go after to put in this role. But I much prefer casting. I really wish that it didn't matter. Like you could, if you have a company that wants to finance your movie, you could spend a year with them just making offers to whatever actor they think will sell their film for and not make the movie. Look, if you're making a movie for less than $4 million or less than $2 million, what you want to make sure the movie is the best it can be. And you want actors that really want to be there and that they're going to give it 100%. I am a big advocate of casting. I love the casting process. I love working with great casting directors, casting people, a casting agency. There's nothing better for me than being in a casting session and having an actor come in and just slay you with their performance. It's fantastic. And I never, to speak to that, I would not want to limit myself in terms of who I'm looking at. I don't like to imagine ethnicities unless being black or being Hispanic or being white or being whatever Asian is intrinsic to the plot. Why not throw open your casting to everybody? Because you never know what someone is going to bring you unexpectedly. And I would never want to interfere with that. So I think James is right. I mean, I don't like characters that are written in a cliched manner, Anyway, good letter. Thank you for that letter. And of course, there's another letter. James sent me another letter. It's a double header from James, but I'm going to do it anyway. Hello, Robert. As of today, Tuesday, October 15th, we are now in Oscar season. The trailer for Bombshell was released a few days after a screening in Los Angeles that greeted raves. I will see this film, and who knows, I could love it. After all, I was against Joker last year when I heard they were going to make the film. Fast forward a year later, and I love the film. I was looking forward to El Camino, a bit cautiously optimistic, and last Friday, I was disappointed. Back in 2005, when it was announced Daniel Craig would play James Bond, I couldn't fathom it. There's Zoe Trope, ladies and gentlemen. A year later, I loved Casino Royale, and it is, to this day, my favorite James Bond film. So I remain open. Bombshell is a film. First of all, for those of you who don't know, Bombshell, Charlize Theron, Nicole Kidman. It is a movie about Roger Ailes and the Fox News scandal. Charlize Theron plays Charlize Theron plays Megyn Kelly. Fox News' Megyn Kelly, and it's all about sexual harassment within the workplace. I thought the trailer looked fantastic. John Lithgow, under very convincing makeup, plays Roger Ailes himself, and I am looking forward to seeing the film. Bombshell is a film already that I can see will stretch things a bit in regard to the true story aspect of the narrative. Full disclosure, I quit taking films like Bombshell seriously after JFK, probably one of my favorite Oliver Stone films. However, over the years, it hasn't aged well. I was into the Kennedy assassination conspiracy only to find out that a great deal of Stone's film is fiction, or as he puts it, an alternative myth to the Warren Report. I found this out after reading the annotated screenplay. Of course, I was 14 at the time I viewed the film, but viewed it as gospel. The lesson I learned is that people should take these films for what they are, entertainment. But 9 times out of 10 leave the theater thinking it's the truth. A depiction of history or an event is not simple enough to fit into a film or miniseries structure. That's part of the problem with our society in regard to the news, which I refer to as infotainment. I learned this lesson working on a popular show, and if something happened behind the scenes, the trades got the stories wrong. It was infuriating when people would tell me what they heard and tell me things thinking they knew the facts, but they weren't there and the facts weren't true. We have a great deal of unreliable narrators, but choose to believe what they are selling because maybe it matches our worldview. People ask me if I watch certain docudramas like Chernobyl or When They See Us, and I answer quite simply, no, due to unreliable narrators. Chernobyl, from the articles I've read, yes, a great miniseries, but a lot of liberties were taken with the facts. Last week, I saw an interview with a doctor who was there, and she refuted a lot of what was portrayed in the miniseries. It wasn't a Russian propaganda thing. It was on Vanity Fair. And if it was propaganda, she's a great actress. She just talked about what she saw and also refuted how radiation was portrayed in the film, instant bleeding, etc. If anything, a miniseries like this should prompt people to read the books the teleplay writer of Chernobyl based his work on. With respect to When They See Us, Ava DuVernay made Selma, and even though I'm not a fan of Lyndon Johnson, he did make the legislation happen. Yet she didn't want to portray that because it went against her story. And when she was called out for it back in 2012, she wasn't too happy in her retorts. So if I can't trust her with one film, how will I trust her with another? Films like Braveheart, love that film, but if you were to research, way off the mark in regard to historical context. It's just entertainment. Even two of my favorite films, All the President's Men and The Insider, take a lot of liberties to tell their stories. Bob Woodward probably wishes he was the character Robert Redford portrayed in the film. It's been said that Woodward was shy and awkward, things Redford wasn't in the film. Even Bob Woodward is an unreliable narrator. After Wired was released, people that love what he did with All the President's Men were upset with his portrayal of John Belushi. One quote, which I believe was from Dan Aykroyd, "If this is how he wrote John, maybe Nixon was innocent." That's the problem. People remember the fiction told as a true story rather than a reality that only people in the room truly know. Life is complicated and gray, yet a film illuminates facts to help the story and the structure for the sake of entertainment. That is true, James. That is true, except for the movie The Big Short. The Big Short is one of the greatest movies ever made. I could watch it over and over again, probably on a double bill with The Social Network, because everything that happened in The Big Short and The Social Network is exactly true, exactly the way it happened, down to the most minute detail. It's true. Jay Roach, for me, is already an unreliable narrator because of Game Change, the HBO movie that portrayed Sarah Palin. What people may not know after watching the film is that the book the film was based on only has Palin in maybe 2 chapters. The book talked about former President Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, John McCain in the run-up to the election, and yet the focus is on Palin. Why? She's an easy target. Plus, the doofus they cast as Todd Palin looked like a stereotypical country bumpkin, and Todd Palin is a nice-looking guy. That, I fear, is the same with Bombshell. Industry towns like Los Angeles and New York, a majority of the populace there hate Fox News. You've got your audience for awards season due to political tribalism. Middle America won't care to see the film, but this is red meat for people that already don't like this infotainment network. Charlize Theron will most likely get an Oscar nomination, and man, she looks like Megyn Kelly in a way that I could watch the film just to try and figure out what they changed with Charlize Theron, sorry. Again, with Oscar season, we get awards fodder, and this will be awards fodder. Or it could be way off. I have problems with Margot Robbie playing a character that didn't exist, or the filmmakers claim is a composite character. Why not portray all the characters that make up the composite? Won't that help their case against Ailes and Fox News? Ailes has already been portrayed this year in the Showtime miniseries The Loudest Man in the Room, and that show really didn't do so hot ratings-wise. Again, people that hate Fox News probably watched it. One other issue is Kelly. I'm more interested in what happened to her and NBC. Look at what's going on with NBC and Ronan Farrow right now. Do we think a film will be made about that anytime soon? A movie about Matt Lauer, about Charlie Rose, or some of the lawsuits at CNN, or something about Jeff Zucker? Probably not. You have to look at where the infotainment networks get their money from. CNN is a part of AT&T. NBC is a part of Comcast. Fox as well. Now it's just under Fox Corporation, or what's left of it. Why not just do a network type of film where it can be fiction and use these things as influence? Well, they wouldn't do that because you miss the ensuing controversy. Speaking of money, Bombshell was dumped due to, well, Annapurna Pictures was having financial troubles. Now, could the real reason Megan Ellison's father, Larry, is a Republican? Plus, the amount of money they spent on Vice, which turned out to be a financial disappointment for the studio, despite a great performance from Christian Bale. Lionsgate swooped up Bombshell at the last minute. Why? Well, look at the pedigree behind the film. Jay Roach won an Emmy for Game Change, Academy Award leading actresses and actors with multiple nominations. Has Lionsgate won Oscars? So this film is Oscar bait on the takeoff and will help the studio's profile. However, audiences will leave believing what they've seen, and people will probably try and interview Kelly to see what she thinks. It's all kind of predictable during Hollywood's own version of a presidential campaign, the Oscars. How ironic that Megyn Kelly will be appearing on Fox to do an interview a year after being ousted from NBC. I wonder if that will be in the, I'm sure, eventual postscript paragraph at the end of Bombshell, right before the credits roll. Anyway, this is the time of year where these films, based on true stories, are released for Oscar contention, and it's just aggravating for me because I will have to do the research just to refute what people will say about what they saw in these films. Robert, thank you for featuring these letters from everyone. It is refreshing to hear these perspectives on film and television, which always create lively and thought-provoking discussions. Well, James, another great letter and interesting. You know, I've never believed that any movie that I've ever seen is true. I've always believed it is sort of a mythical representation of the truth, because it's a movie. You know, you're not watching even a documentary, the rawest, most real documentary. You're still watching something that's edited. There's music. I mean, it's all film, and whether you're telling any story that you're telling via film, whether it's a dramatization of real life events, there's always stuff in them that is not real. Composite characters. First of all, you know, you never see people go to the bathroom in these movies. You never see people usually take showers or eat. You know, you watch all of these moments where all these dramatic things happen, and they're designed to be caressed to make the story better. You know, I watched JFK, and JFK is pretty, I mean, yeah, you've got Jim Garrison was the only man who brought criminal proceedings in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And that's true. And you read what happened, and a real life has to be reshaped to be put into a palatable movie format. And I think it should be understood by anybody that when you read a dramatization of a real event, or you're watching a dramatization of a real event, the dramatization has been sculpted to fit the paradigm of movies, whether it's documentary or narrative. Things are changed. They get changed, and they have to. I mean, one of the first laser discs I ever bought was The Doors. I had a laser disc of The Doors. It was great. And I believe it had the actual Ed Sullivan performance of The Doors singing Light My Fire. And Oliver Stone recreated it. That the Ed Sullivan show is in the movie The Doors. I love The Doors because The Doors is a biopic about the Doors that feels like you're listening to a Doors album. And it's completely mythologized. Jim Morrison has been mythologized over the years, but they actually show that scene. And I had watched that video so many times of that performance that when Oliver Stone recreated it, he added colored smoke pots on the screen. And to emphasize when Jim says, "Girl, we couldn't get much higher," you know, and he leans into the camera. That did not happen, you know, and you watch the real performance, and then you watch the Oliver Stone's version of the performance, and it's right there. One is the actual reality, and the other is the heightened reality, that the cinematic reality that Oliver Stone wanted to bring to it. And I don't expect a movie to me should be, I think what a movie does is it makes you aware of a point in history. It makes you aware of something that happened, but then you should delve into it. You should never, I mean, I just assume people are smart enough to go, oh, well, I should read further and find out what really went on, because there's a lot that could have really gone on that I don't get, that I certainly didn't see. So, Um, I think you're right, but I still look, to me, dramatizations of real life events still work as mythic storytelling. They might be based on real events, but a movie still has to set up a character, set up the story, set up the dramatic tension, and then pay it all off in movie format. And even though something is based, like when I watch All the President's Men, I know it's based on a real story, but I'm still watching it as a movie, and I want it to feel like a movie. I don't sit there and go, this is a dramatization of exactly what happened. I know for a fact, because look, there were no cameras when somebody was standing in some position or where they were standing. I mean, I know there were no lights either. Like when you go meet somebody in a garage, for instance, or you're going to go meet Deep Throat or talk to Deep Throat on the phone, I know that wherever they meet or whatever, that's completely dramatized. That is not the way it happened in real life. Even if you shoot, like there were times when they shot Bryan Singer's Valkyrie on some of the real locations, they didn't look exactly like that, and I know this, but I like historical dramatizations of movies because there is some semblance of verisimilitude. A lot of people do try and make them as authentic as possible. And you have to take them with a grain of salt, but you can also enjoy them as movies. Lawrence of Arabia, perfect example. Amadeus. It's funny because Amadeus is really, it's a play, and it takes sort of people and events and inspires this story that might have some semblance of truth to it. But I certainly don't think Amadeus is the way Tom Hulce played him in Milos Forman's movie, even though I love the movie. But the movie still works as a movie. I don't necessarily think it works as historical truth, but it works as a movie. So it's I think the way you point that out, and I think it's great, and I think you're absolutely right. But why deprive yourself of watching what could be a great story that is the jumping off point for learning about something? This next letter comes from Mark C. Mark Chure. Greetings, Rob. Recently, you were discussing your love for French film. While not a big lover of French film, every now and then they produce something completely out of left field, which I wind up loving. My all-time favorite French film is Brotherhood of the Wolf. This is the case of a movie having everything: sex, violence, action, mystery, and the chairman of Kitchen Stadium, Mark DeCostas. I would love to get into it, but this movie is to be experienced before discussed, and I'd hate to destroy a good cold viewing. I'll tell you. My second favorite French film is a bit of a genre picture. I'm just not sure what genre it fits into. The movie is City of Lost Children. First, let me say this. I'm not for or against, nor do I condemn those who enjoy marijuana. But if you do enjoy this, I wonder if the director had you folks in mind when conceiving this film. It's science fiction, but not. It feels a bit like a dream and a nightmare all at once. Cryptic? Wait till you watch the movie. What I can say is that this is one of the weirdest, most interesting rabbit holes this side of Alice. Also, despite seeming dark and dreary, it's one of the most beautiful looking movies I've ever seen. Just in case you need a hook to watch, Hellboy himself, Ron Perlman, has a role. Again, I try and give away nothing. This is one of the most unique and twisted films I've ever seen, and I love it. To my fellow imagination connoisseurs, these are two you must see, and if you enjoy physical media, belong in your collection. Mark Chure. Somebody else asked about City of Lost Children just the other day, and of course that was directed. It was co-directed along with Delicatessen by Amelie's Jean-Pierre Jeunet and Marc Caro. I love City of Lost Children, and I love Delicatessen, and you're right. Anybody who's a fan of fantasy cinema should watch City of Lost Children. It's amazing. As far as Brotherhood of the Wolf is concerned, I own a 3-disc special edition DVD of the film. I love Brotherhood of the Wolf. And like you said, it crosses the streams. It crosses many genres. It's a lot of fun. It's also got horror elements as well. And it's funny though, both City of Lost Children and Brotherhood of the Wolf they're both French films. I would also say another favorite French film of mine that I've talked about on the show is Doberman, Jan Koonen's Doberman, as far as a crazy, insane crime thriller, French crime thriller goes. But when my first experience, when I first think of French cinema, I mean, I think of Truffaut, I think of Godard, I think of Jean-Pierre Melville, because I love Melville's movies. And I think of Belmondo, and I think of Alain Delon, and modern French films are not the first thing that pop into my mind when I think of French cinema. I guess I think of it French cinema from the 50s and the 60s first. But yeah, like I've talked about on the show, Amélie. Elizabeth and I really bonded over Amélie. That's when we first met. That she had that in her profile on OkCupid. And we went and saw Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who co-directed City of Lost Children, and got him to sign her giant original French Amélie poster. But yes, I mean, I do love French cinema. And there's a lot of great French horror cinema. I talk about Martyrs and Inside, my favorite French horror double feature. But yeah, I mean, both of those movies, Brotherhood and the Wolf, for you imagination connoisseurs, if you want to see some fantastic cinema, watch not just Brotherhood of the Wolf, which is a genre-bending movie. Do watch City of Lost Children and Delicatessen. Heck, even watch Amélie. And find Doberman. If you like Tarantino and you want to see a crazy movie with Vincent Cassel and Monica Bellucci, get Doberman. Doberman is dope. I highly recommend it. So, Mark, thanks for writing in. What a fine letter. My man Swack Props, Cal Kamal, is here again, all the way from Malaysia. My man Cal, of course. One of the things I love about Cal, and you imagination connoisseurs never cease to amaze me, is that Cal, of course, his company Swack Props, which you can find on Etsy, he makes prop book replicas that are astonishing. They're just astonishing in their quality. He, of course, made me one of the 9 gates of the Kingdom of Heaven from Roman Polanski's The Ninth Gate. I couldn't believe that anybody even felt enough for that movie to make that book. I love that book. I love what he did for me. But his Grail Diary, he made a Henry Jones Grail Diary that's amazing. But anyway, look up Swack. It's S''WAK, Swack, one word, second word, props. Check it out. Cal is here. Hi, Rob. I thought I'd write to you about, well, hang on a second before because this is a good letter. I don't want to be distracted if I'm leaving someone else out here. Yes. DC Marvel says, hey, Rob, I just discovered that you have your own channel. No way, dude. Totally don't. No, that's amazing. I love when you're on the John Campea show. I want to hear your thoughts on Paul Dano as the Riddler. Missed you on the show Friday. Well, my Friday, there was work, by the way, work intruded. My Fridays on John are tenuous because I was only doing 3 days a week. But yes, I think the Paul Dano, I think he's an amazing, amazing actor. I've loved him in everything that he's in. And he's kind of got what I would call, I guess, a bland face, which I actually think has worked to his advantage in every role he's ever had that I've loved him in. I think he's going to make a great Riddler. Boss Logic did a picture of him as the Riddler. That was dope. Love Boss Logic. So anybody who wants to see that, look that up. I'm a big fan. I think it's great casting. Along with Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, I think this movie is shaping up to be wonderful. Can't wait to see it. So first of all, thank you for supporting the channel. I really appreciate that. That's very nice. Willow Yang says, who'd bite a shark? Do you know that some killer whales hunt great whites? They flip them onto their backs to paralyze them and tear out their livers. Well, thank you for that, Willow. What Willow Yang is referring to, I tweeted out a photo. There was a giant, like what they called in the article, an apex predator. And I want to say they found it off the coast of Newfoundland or something. They found a giant, like a 14-foot great white shark it was still alive, I guess. They caught it. It was a little nebulous. but there was apparently, you could see it, there were giant scars on this shark's head as if it had been bitten by something that was a great deal larger than the 13 or 14 feet that this shark was. And I tweeted out the picture, I tweeted out the story. I'm like, what the hell bit this thing? And of course, everybody's coming back to me and they're like, well, you know that great whites attack sharks. I'm like, I do, but this is a big shark. And that'd have to be a pretty big great white. But I did not know, Willow, that's why I love you, that the killer whales flip sharks onto their backs to paralyze them and tear out their livers. I wonder if they use fava beans and a nice Chianti too, because I'd like to believe that they do. But yes, I did know that great white sharks are frequently attacked by killer whales. By the way, La Poopy is here. La Poopy says, Xeon or Federation? Have you seen War in the Pocket? Ladies and gentlemen, La Poopy is talking about Gundam. There is the Principality of Xeon and the Earth Federation, and they are at war. Now, as everybody knows, I need to get that new Bandai $900 die-cast new Gundam that's coming out. I think it got pushed to 2020, but I've never wanted a toy so bad in my life. I want that one, and you can't pre-order it anywhere. I think that they didn't even say how many they're making. No matter where you go, when you in Japan, you go anywhere here. I was slow on the uptake. I didn't know it was coming out. And the day it went up for pre-order, apparently it was sold out everywhere. And then to get the funnels, to get the new Gundam funnels. By the way, that new Gundam is from Char's Counterattack, which is awesome. I have seen War in the Pocket. I've seen most of the Gundam shows. I haven't seen a lot of Unicorn was the last one, and then I watched Gundam the Origin, but I the last 3 or 4 years I'm behind on Gundam. But Mobile Suit Gundam is one of my favorite things. For those of you who don't know, it's a giant rabbit hole, but basically Mobile Suit Gundam is a Japanese animated series that debuted in 1979, and it is about these gigantic, very Babylon 5, but even bigger space colonies called Sides that there's a war between Mother Earth and these space colonists that form the Principality of Xeon that want to be free. And instead of fighting in fighter jets, they fight in what are called mobile suits. Mobile suits, like this. Like this perfect grade mobile suit here. This is a Gundam. Which I love this. I love this gun, by the way. Which a piece fell off it. I've been repairing him, as you know, because he's been sitting here for weeks. But I'm a huge fan, and of course they fight. The mobile suits, they fight, and War in the Pocket is one of those. Now, I'm a big fan of the Universal Century, which is the main Gundam continuity. There's lots of other Gundams. You might have seen Wing Gundam, which is a different continuity, or Turn A Gundam. But it's a long story, but I just love Gundam. Anyway, back to my man Cal's letter, which I love. It's about James Bond, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, Rob. I thought I'd write you about my thoughts on the Pierce Brosnan era of Bond movies. As you know, I'm a big Dalton fan, and I was disappointed he didn't make more films as Bond after the less than satisfactory License to Kill. While he was set to return for a third film, he quit the role in 1994 due to a legal dispute between Eon Productions and Kevin McClory. Yeah, I mean, for those of you who don't know, 1989, the longest period of time since 1962 that we did not get a James Bond film was between the release of License to Kill in the summer of 1989 and the release of GoldenEye, the first Pierce Brosnan Bond, in 1995. And in that, there was Kevin McClory, who had the rights to make Thunderball all the way back in the day, was fighting against the Albert Broccoli estate and Dan Jank and Eon Productions for years, for decades. And he died a miserable man. But that dispute, it reignited and caused the Bond franchise to get derailed for 6 years. Anyway, while he was set to return for a third film, he quit the role in 1994 due to the legal dispute between Eon Productions and Kevin McClory. Pierce Brosnan was cast as the new 007 to replace Dalton, and the media made a huge fuss proclaiming that he was born to be Bond. Well, for those of you who don't know, Pierce Brosnan was going to be Bond earlier on, but he was on his responsibilities. His contract with Remington Steele did not allow him to appear as Bond. So the producers finally did get him as Bond in 95's GoldenEye, and he played the role through Die Another Day. So Pierce Brosnan did GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, World Is Not Enough, and Die Another Day. I think that's right. He did 4. Brosnan's casting was no-brainer, as he was originally set to replace Roger Moore's Bond back in the late 80s, but because of the renewal of his Remington Steele contract, after the temporary cancellation of the TV show, Dalton took over the License to Kill instead. For me personally, I was convinced he'd make a good 007, not because of his role as Remington Steele, but rather his performance as Ian Strawn Dunross, the Taipan of Noble House in the 1988 adaptation of James Clavell's novel. Brosnan as Dunross makes a charismatic Taipan and is a character with an edge, essentially decent, but often as steely and merciless as his opponents. Perfect for Bond. 6 years after License to Kill in 1995, production finally began on Bond 17, titled GoldenEye, and it modernized, GoldenEye came out in 95, and it modernized the character in the wake of the Cold War. As you often quoted, Bond is referred to by M, played impeccably by Dame Judi Dench for many movies to come, as a, quote, sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a relic of the Cold War. The changes largely proved cosmetic, as the formula remained the same, but nonetheless, GoldenEye was an excellent revitalization of an aging franchise, thanks to Martin Campbell's confident direction. He also directed Casino Royale. Brosnan completely nails the role in his first outing as James Bond, playing a confident, charismatic wit with a hint of vulnerability. The main set piece, when Bond steals a T-54-55 series tank and plows through the streets of St. Petersburg, causing untold amounts of property damage while the famous theme plays, is perfection. As the main villain Alec Trevelyan, Sean Bean plays him as a dark mirror of Bond without the moral center and fueled by petty revenge and greed. For the Bond girls, we have Famke Janssen as the sexy and sadomasochistic Xenia Onatopp, and Isabel Scorupco's Natalia Simonova, who ends up doing very little. But she's hot. The theme song sung by Tina Turner is easily one of the better ones in the history of the Bond films. Also written by Bono and The Edge. My mere gripe with GoldenEye is the lack of any action scenes whatsoever involving the BMW Z3, although it was good to see the DB5 in action again after being absent for a long time. 1997 saw the release of Tomorrow Never Dies, which is my favorite movie of the Brosnan era. By the way, Tomorrow Never Dies does not get credit. It's a really good Bond movie. The only problem is in editing, they sort of they dumbed it down a little bit, and Stamper was, we'll get to that later. The pre-title sequence where Bond infiltrates a terrorist arms bazaar on the Russian border with M and Robertson, played by Colin Salmon. By the way, I love Robinson. I loved Colin Salmon, and I wished he was in more. Providing communication support is one of my favorites in the series. Brosnan settles in comfortably into his role as Bond, charming with the women, but cold-hearted with the villains. Michelle Yeoh's Wai Lin is a nice change of pace from other Bond girls, as being a secret agent herself, she's not helpless. She's not a helpless damsel in distress and can more than hold her own against a group of bad guys. And yes, we get a spectacular Bond car action sequence in this one with the BMW 750i with a great backing score by David Arnold. The biggest problem with Tomorrow Never Dies is the weak villain. Jonathan Pryce is badly miscast as Elliot Carver. Come on. The only good news is bad news. His attempt to do larger-than-life supervillain comes out as miscalculated wimpiness and cartoonish, especially when he was mocking Weiland's martial arts fighting skill. Luckily, he's aided by Gotts Otto as the memorable henchman Stamper. The title song by Sheryl Crow is good, but I prefer Katie Lang's version, which sounded more Bond-esque, and which musical cues are heavily integrated into the score of the finished film. Look, I agree. I love that Katie Lang song. Sadly, the Brosnan era started its decline with The World Is Not Enough. I found it rather dull, with nothing that really stands out. Robert Carlyle as Renard would have worked better if he was the main villain and had a bigger part, but he turned out to be more of a pathetic character, playing second fiddle to Sophie Marceau's Electra King, the Bond girl with Stockholm Syndrome. Denise Richards, as a rocket scientist, destroys verisimilitude to smithereens, and the one-liner, "I thought Christmas only came once a year," was cringeworthy. That's because her name was Dr. Christmas Jones. The theme song had the potential to be one of the best, if not for Shirley Manson's weak vocals. Imagine if it had been sung by the likes of Shirley Bassey. Sadly, The World Is Not Enough was the last time we saw Desmond Llewellyn as Q, as he had died in a car accident shortly after its release in 1999. Then came 2002's Die Another Day, which was the first Bond film in the post-9/11 era. Previous Bond films have always had ridiculous plots and offered weak character development, but Die Another Day takes the cake. It was the Batman and Robin of the franchise, ridiculous, camp, badly acted, written and directed, and little more than an expensive opportunity to create potential tie-ins. The CGI was terrifically abysmal. That tsunami surfing pre-title sequence was all manners of bad. Well, that was later. The tsunami surfing came later when he was in the ice. He got captured in the pre-title sequence. The Aston Martin with the cloaking device was bonkers. And what was up with the Madonna song? I don't know. Notwithstanding all that, Brosnan is still at the top of his game and is one of the film's few saving graces, although his pronunciation of mojito solicited one of the biggest laughs of the movie for me. As Jinx, Halle Berry makes a memorable entrance that pays homage to Ursula Andress' Honey Rider from Dr. No. Although I got to tell you, if you're gonna do an homage to Ursula Andress from Dr. No, there's no better homage than Daniel Craig himself coming out of the water in Casino Royale with his perfectly sculpted body. I mean, I'm telling you, there have been few times in my life when I've had a physical response to a man, and that was definitely one of them. Although, to be fair, Jinx was pretty good too. The action will come off as enjoyable in any other generic action film, but for Die Another Day, it was just excessive and turns Bond into a caricature of himself. And like the aforementioned Batman and Robin, it forced everyone involved to have a big think about the future of the franchise throughout the current formula and thankfully start anew. You know, there was talk back then of a Jinx spin-off movie that never happened, but now this week, as far as Bond is concerned, we've heard that they might be doing a Lashana Lynch 007 spinoff with Lashana Lynch playing the female 007 in a new series of films. So apparently she doesn't die in the movie, which is interesting in Bond 25. In summary, Pierce Brosnan is a superb Bond. He really captured all the best elements of his predecessors and was also a fine actor. Unfortunately, he had to carry the franchise through some rough territory. It's a shame that he got fired by Eon. He was the only Bond who didn't leave on his own terms. Sincerely yours, Cal, a.k.a. Swack Props. Well, Cal, first of all, I love the fact that you wrote in about James Bond. I can never talk about James Bond movies enough. I think you're right. I mean, to me, I actually like World Is Not Enough, despite Denise Richards' performance and Renard being a weak villain. I like the movie. I love Sophie Marceau as Electra King. I liked M's relationship. I love the World Is Not Enough. I think to this day has the longest. Maybe Spectres is longer, but I think the opening pre-title sequence with the jet boat on the Thames is one of my favorite opening pre-title sequences for any Bond. So World Is Not, I would say that GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, and World Is Not Enough are all solid entries into the Bond franchise. World Is Not Enough, slightly weaker, but Tomorrow Never Dies and GoldenEye are good films, solid B-plus movies as far as Bond movies go. Very serviceable, very well made, and very enjoyable. Die Another Day goes completely off the rails for me. I love the first half of it. I even love the sword fight in the film, but the movie's ridiculous, and the ending, I don't even, I think I saw Die Another Day twice, but even on home video, I watched the first half and I just don't even bother with the last half of the movie because it pisses me off so much. But I thought that was a great summation of Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. You know, the problem was Casino Royale really is the first Bond film of I don't know, decades where you had a really solid script where there's as much character stuff going on and character interplay as there was the Bond element to it. And it was very satisfying. And I don't feel that the Daniel Craig era has lived up to that. That's why I really hope that Bond 25, for me, Bond 25 might be the last James Bond movie under the Broccoli's or Albert Broccoli's or his legacy. It might be the last, because why continue? Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson, they're also getting up in years. Barbara Broccoli has worked since she was a little girl on Bond movies. And after this 25th Bond film, they could probably sell the franchise to someone else and rethink the whole formula, start from scratch. I think that might serve the franchise very, very well. Who knows? I don't know. I've just loved James Bond all my life, and it's fun to discuss these movies. And it's interesting because as I get older, I'm feeling the same way. I mean, I'm never going to feel the same way about J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movies. I will never accept those 3 movies. There's nothing about them that I find enjoyable to watch. But there are things in his, like Star Wars, The Force Awakens, as much as I dislike that movie, there's more in that movie to enjoy for me than in any of the 3 Star Trek movies. But the James Bond franchise is something that I always seem to be able to revisit with a smile. I never tire of James Bond movies. And I guess that's a good thing. And I can't wait for Bond 25. April 2nd in London, boys and girls. April 2nd in London at the Odeon Cinema in Leicester Square. Be there or be square. Hassan Chavez says, sprinkle me. What movies do you think are necessary? Well, look, honestly, Hassan, no movies are necessary. They're all luxury items. They're entertainment. All entertainment is a luxury. I mean, I'd like to think that human life, once we stop running away from apex predators in the plains of Africa, after we got out of Olduvai Gorge or whatever, what is life? Life is worth living about entertainment. So I don't think any movies are necessary, but now that we have movies that are necessary, I mean, now that we have movies, there are some movies that are just necessary. You have to watch them. And if you haven't, you're just not living your life. And I'm not going to say what movies I think are necessary. I leave that up to you. What movies do you think are necessary? What movies could you not live with in your life? On the John Campy show, people are always sending us their lists of top 10 movies, and they just they'll send in chats, and they'll just send us their top 10 films, and we read them. What are your top 10 films? I'd be curious. Stub McShave says the self-repairing invisible car in Die Another Day is ridiculous. The entire scene, in Iceland, in the ice hotel, all of that is just awful. I mean, it's just really, and the funny thing about it is the movie begins, the idea that James Bond is captured and taken to North Korea and held for a year. I love that idea. The rest of the movie totally squanders it. It's just ridiculous. It is a ridiculous movie, and I don't like it. I love this letter though. This letter comes from Colin Norris. Hello, Rob. You said something very provocative about superhero movies recently that has stayed with me. Let me first say that I have experienced some superhero movie fatigue. I have found their attempts to diversify in the genre interesting, but lacking. Sure, Winter Soldier is a throwback to the political thrillers of the 1970s, but is it equal to any of them? For me, they are watered-down versions of better films, and I accept and even enjoy them as such, but I don't expect a lot. I was quite secure in said acceptance, but then you made the statement that has continued to roll around in my imagination. You said you wanted to see the Serpico of superhero movies. It's true, I did say that on this show. I've wondered, what would that look like? A proper Frank Castle film? Definite possibility, but not quite there for me. Then I saw Joker. I know a sequel has been alternately ruled out or described as a possibility by the filmmakers, and I went not caring if there was going to be a sequel or anything to do with the Batman. And then I saw it. The film ended, and I see Batman in Todd Phillips' world crystal clear. If Joker is derived from Travis Bickle, Bruce Wayne could easily be Stanley White from Michael Cimino's Year of the Dragon, which, by the way, Warner Archive put out on Blu-ray disc. God love them. I have no idea where you land on Year of the Dragon, but Rourke is fantastic in it, and the parallels to Bruce Wayne, especially a more realistic 70s version, are there. Think about it. Stanley White is violent, obsessed. He breaks any rules he pleases, alienates those close to him, yet possesses a streak of integrity that cuts to the bone, and he could not accept the injustice and indifference of the world. He puts a young cop undercover against the triads, even though everyone says the boy isn't ready, and ends up getting the rookie killed. Robin, anyone? This is more a volatile, complex character than the stoic versions of Batman we've seen. Would that approach be the Serpico of superhero movies? It's the closest my mind is settled on. Will it get made? I doubt it, but I think it damn well should. If it doesn't, I still want a Serpico of superhero films. What a great idea. Thanks for the idea, and thanks for reading this. Well, Colin, first of all, bruh, let me just say, son, you and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. I love Year of the Dragon. Year of the Dragon came out, I want to say in 1986. Let's see, shall we? Dragon release date. Let's see. Year of the Dragon came out 85. It's 85. I was wrong. Scott Mance would not be proud. I thought it was 85. I mean 86. For those of you who don't know, or you've never heard about Year of the Dragon, Michael Cimino, who directed Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. He also, I believe Thunderbolt and Lightfoot was one of, or no, it was not Jeff Bridges' first film. Thunderbolt and Lightfoot's Jeff Bridges and Clint Eastwood. That was Michael Cimino's first movie. Then he went on to direct, of course, the very well-regarded The Deer Hunter that won Best Picture. And then, of course, he went on and made Heaven's Gate, which was considered one of the biggest debacles in Hollywood history, although the Criterion Blu-ray of it, when it's the restored long version, is pretty beautiful and worth a look. So after he was basically disgraced, he came back and he made a 1985 film called Year of the Dragon that stars, Mickey Rourke is awesome as Stanley White, as this cop, not corrupt, but corrupt. He like Colin said, he's not a nice man. And there was the story is about trouble in New York's Chinatown. And John Lone, oh my God, John Lone is so good. Plays basically a triad boss. He's awesome in the movie. And Mickey Rourke has a relationship with an Asian reporter, an Asian model named, I think her name, if memory serves, is Ariane, and she is absolutely stunning, but cannot act her way out of a paper bag. But that doesn't mean it matter. Year of the Dragon rules, and it delves into, and it was so much racism. Everyone was accusing Michael Cimino of being racist, and that the movie was racist. And look, I loved anything that happens in Chinatown. I'll watch it. I'll watch any movie with Chinese gangsters, triads, all that. And John Lone is one handsome dude, man. And watching him in those dapper suits, he'd been in The Last Emperor. I think he plays the adult Puyi, I think, but he's awesome in Year of the Dragon. I love Year of the Dragon. It's great. But the idea of I like that you like my idea of the Serpico of superhero movies doing Batman as Stanley White. I would love to see. You know what? I would love to have seen 1985 Mickey Rourke play Batman. I mean, it's so great. I haven't watched this yet. I haven't put in this disc, but now Mickey Rourke, 80s Mickey Rourke. When you're talking about Diner Mickey Rourke, you're talking about the Pope of Greenwich Village Mickey Rourke. You're talking about Angel Heart Mickey Rourke. You're talking about Year of the Dragon Mickey Rourke, or my favorite, 9.5 Weeks Mickey Rourke. You can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong with 80s Mickey Rourke. Even though he turned out to be a manipulative douchebag in 9.5 Weeks, that dude was my hero. But I want to thank you, Colin, for writing in. I love that. You know what? We just don't talk about Year of the Dragon enough, but we should, because it's awesome. And Warner Archive put out that awesome Blu-ray. So what a great letter. Thank you for writing in, which made me feel good about it. This letter comes from Christopher Collins. I think I already read this, didn't I? I think I did. I think I did. Well, you know what? I'll read it again. If I didn't, it's about Willow Yang, so why not? Christopher Collins says, I was recently reading Willow Yang's episode review of Shades of Grey. Because you know what? I love it when you guys and gals and gentle people and beings from all around the universe, I love when you guys write in to comment on other people's letters or what they write. So I'm going to read this again. I was recently reading Willow Yang's episode review of Shades of Grey. I thought it was interesting hearing when she brings up her own views on the episode The Dauphin. She says it was her least favorite episode of season 2 of The Next Generation. I would like to debate that The Dauphin is actually the best Wesley Crusher episode. We see Wesley actually fail at his job due to being distracted by a girl. We see Wesley acting normal and most relatable to the audience, other than maybe in the episode Family. This is where nerddom shines at its best, where we can see nerds share cool aspects we know on the holodeck to others. It is the modern day equivalent to us of showing people we like to hang out with music, shows, films, or artwork we enjoy. I like the idea of a species not knowing what the taste of ice cream was like. This is not unlike going to visit a different culture and not knowing about their food. In this episode, we get this great and rare interaction between Guinan and Commander Riker about dating in the Dauphin. We get an introduction to an alien species that is the precursor to Odo in Deep Space Nine, or changeling Martia, who is seen in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. I like this idea of a species training all their life to be the perfect political leader to save a world. This is a concept seen in all world history and a concept we would continue to see done again in season 5's episode, The Perfect Mate. I thought it was interesting seeing a guard or protector disguised as an older woman and freezing out over a patient with a disease she found as a threat. I also liked the relationship of the older figure had with Worf, and even how Worf could respect her. Well, Christopher, what a great letter. You know, I think you didn't just tell Willow Yang she was wrong. You were respectful, you were nice, and you offered an alternative point of view. This, to me, is perfect imagination connoisseur behavior, and that is why you, sir, are a member of the Post-Geek Singularity community. I have to tell you, I've always found the Dauphin to be an insufferable episode of TNG. Never liked it. But you know, your points have made me actually want to go rewatch the episode again. And you know how I can do that? On the Blu-rays that I own. As a matter of fact, on the second season Next Generation Blu-rays, you can see me hosting, that's right, on camera, hosting a reunion, a 25th anniversary reunion for the entire main cast of Star Trek The Next Generation, including Will Wheaton as Wesley Crusher. Shameless plug. But thank you for that. That's interesting. And I like the fact that you were responding to Willow's review. So that's a good thing. Patrick O'Malley says, is there a world where Disney Plus is a mistake? That's a good question. Is there a world where Disney Plus is a mistake? I don't think so. You know, I think ultimately, here's how I feel about it. As much as I love my physical media, I know that I think within 10 years, physical media will be gone. Maybe certain boutique labels will still exist, but even something like Shout Factory or Shudder, there will be some streaming service that will be all horror. You know, that a lot of horror films, a lot of genre movies are kind of homeless films. They're parts of larger libraries, but some of them exist unto themselves. I just think physical media is going to go away, and I love the fact that ultimately Disney will have a place where you can go and see everything that they've ever put out. I think for posterity's sake, the idea that you can just sit there and click around and watch all of this stuff. I mean, I'm hoping, you know, I've often thought when I've pointed out to people that when I was a kid in the 70s, when in their 80s, when you would go to school before school started in the morning, when we would get up and have breakfast, they had the Our Gang shorts from the 30s, Spanky and Alfalfa and Buckwheat and those the Our Gang shorts. You know, what is it, Hal Roach, and those are from the 30s. And then you would come home in the afternoon, and between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock at night, there was a block of, on our independent stations, of old sitcoms, whether it was My Three Sons or Leave It to Beaver or Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie or Partridge Family and Brady Bunch. So you could see pop culture also in those, the Andy Griffith Show from the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, and the 30s. You missed the 40s because there was no TV shows in World War II and all kinds of things. But so in one day as a kid, I was exposed to American pop culture from the 1930s, the 1950s, the 1960s, and the 1970s, all in one day, every day. And I love those shows. Like as a kid, I didn't go like, I'm not going to watch black and white or whatever. And what's interesting about Disney, yes, it's wholesome Disney entertainment. But if you go back and you looked at Disney stuff from, say, the 50s, not necessarily the Mickey Mouse Club, but the Wonderful World of Disney, their nature shows, they were relatively sophisticated. Walt Disney did not look down on children. He made children's entertainment, but he never made it dumb. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, if I had kids, if I was a new parent, I would really be excited about having the Disney streaming service, because I think kids could do a lot worse than have access to all of that material. And I would curate it for them. I would start out my kids watching 50s Disney, Wonderful World of Disney, all that stuff. I mean, sure, they'll work up to their stuff, but as a young parent with young kids, I would go back and show, I would curate the entertainment. And I would say, look, kids, here is this service with a company that has been servicing the interests of children since its inception. They made the first animated feature-length cartoon in Snow White. They made Pinocchio and push the kids in the direction I'd want them to go. But then they would have this great resource. It's like literally having a library of the entire history of Disney. Now, would I want them to only subsist on that diet? No. But I think in the long run, it's probably best if your kids began their lives watching the entire pantheon of Disney entertainment than, say, South Park, maybe. So I don't think there's any world where Disney Plus is a mistake. And I'm excited to get it, not just because of The Mandalorian, but just because there's a lot of, like, I'd love to go back. There's no reason why I'm going to go back and watch Candle Shoe. I couldn't say to Elizabeth, like, hey, honey, tonight we're going to watch a Disney film, a kid's film from the 70s that I happen to like. I mean, I don't even remember what it's like. But I think it's good. I think ultimately it's good. And I'm excited to get it because it's only $7, and I'm going to be able to watch 8 episodes of a new Star Wars TV show that has a budget of $15 million an episode. This last letter comes from our moderator, the Sheriff of Nottingham, Mr. Terry Flynn. Although I think I did read this before. But I'm going to read it anyway. Why not? This comes from Terry Flynn, our moderator, who does a great job. I don't even know if he's still here in the chat now. But maybe he is, maybe he's not. I don't know. But Terry Flynn says, greetings, Rob. I hope this isn't too long a piece, though I deal with a couple of issues you may have strong views on. First, my best friend was an undergraduate my best friend I was an undergraduate with at Cambridge is now a professor of cultural studies in Tokyo. No promises, but he might be able to get that model you need before we meet for Bond 25 in London. I need to check my dates. Second, being someone who is fluent in Japanese to a professional standard, he often gets insights. Oh, you know what? I did read this. I am going to read. I'm not going to read this, Terry, because I did read this letter. I did. I read this letter, and I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm not beyond making a mistake. So I'm going to end with this. Brian Eng says, the Rock and Roll nominees, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees have been announced. Who are your 5 picks from this list? Pat Benatar, the Dave Matthews Band, Depeche Mode, the Doobie Brothers, Whitney Houston, Judas Priest, Kraftwerk, MC5, Motorhead, Nine Inch Nails, Notorious B.I.G., Rufus featuring Shaka Khan, Todd Rundgren, Soundgarden, T-Rex, and Thin Lizzy. My God. This is from Brian Ang, longtime imagination connoisseur. You know, we don't talk about music enough on this show. Wow. Okay. My number 1 pick for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Todd Rundgren. You got to pick Todd Rundgren. Todd Rundgren's great. That'll be 1. I'm going to pick the Doobie Brothers, believe it or not, because they keep you running. China Grove, got to have Doobie Brothers. I'm going to pick Depeche Mode because I love Depeche Mode. So that's 3. I'm going to pick, you know what? I'm going to pick Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan, because I love Shaka Khan and she deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And for my last pick, let me tell you who doesn't get in there. Dave Matthews Band, no. Kraftwerk. You know what? I'm going to take Kraftwerk. So Kraftwerk, Depeche Mode, the Doobie Brothers, Todd Rundgren, and Shaka Khan. That's my pick, Brian Ang. What that says about me, I will let you decide. Sorry, Terry, I didn't read your letter again. I hope you don't think I am a bad person. I hope you don't. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings to this a conclusion. That brings a conclusion to this. The 253rd episode of Robservations. Of course, Robservations is the show about something. It wouldn't exist without you imagination connoisseurs that make up this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. And it wouldn't be the community it is without our great moderators, Detective Jim, Terry, the Sheriff of Nottingham, Greg Smith, and, of course, the absentee, Honorable Mayor Mike Bodden. And of course, I think we're going to bring on some new blood to moderate just to see what we can do with that, which I'm looking forward to. I think we might be bringing in some female blood, if you know what I'm saying, and not the way it's talked about in the Bombshell trailer. But I think it's going to be great. And I want to thank all of them for keeping everybody honest and keeping it all fun, because I am, after all, the master of fun and wonder, and they make sure of that. And I want to thank Lucky Tiger for sponsoring this podcast. Lucky Tiger men's grooming products for those men who want to look good and feel great. It's a tongue twister, I can't even speak. If you want, you go to their website at getluckytiger.com. You want to buy anything there, you punch in PGS for Post-Geek Singularity. When you check out, you get 20% off of your order. And with that, I bring this chat to a close. And I say, if you like, please hit like, please subscribe if you do. If you don't, if you want to call me a douchebag, say that too. Put it in the comments, because I respond. I read all the comments. And go to the website, theburnettwork.net. I know we're behind. We're behind. My great webmaster in the Honorable Mayor Mike Bodden he is immersed in his re-election campaign to become the mayor of Riverdale, Iowa for his 2nd term. But we will get back into it, I promise. And Ali State's column is going to debut when I get the graphic. Our first columnist, who is writing The Feminerd Gaze, Ali State. Go find her on Twitter. Tell her I was talking about her, that her column is going to drop. She wrote a column on Batman, the animated series, which I thought was pretty cool. And I'm always looking to we're going to start broadening the brand, doing more things. And I should announce I'm going to be doing another show, a regular show about a certain topic that I talk about a lot, but I'll leave that vague for the time being. But anyway, I want to thank you all for being here. I will be back tomorrow. By the way, tomorrow is the last day that I can actually talk on this show where we don't have a Watchmen television series in the world. And I don't know how good that's going to be. I don't know if it's going to, but we're going to talk about it. Anyway, I want to thank you all for being here and being the way that you are and supporting the channel. And as always, have a better day.